Now let's move on to the good afternoon, everybody. How is everyone doing today? Feels good, right? Submitted your assignment, so no more stress now. Already done. 60% in the bag. Easy. Easiest subject of your entire uni life, right? Okay, I have a big majority of you here. So, how's everyone doing? Submitted your group assignment, right? I think should be very energetic now. Short semester is gonna be over. Easy peasy. Okay, so got other assignments? Can lah, no problem. Not worry about you guys. Most of you, I think will do quite well. I have not gone through all of it yet, but I've seen one or two. Seems pretty good. Okay, so I have a small announcement before we begin today's lecture, which is Chinese New Year is coming. So next Monday, which is supposedly our last lecture slot, is actually on a public holiday. Um, right, so I need you guys to tell me how am I gonna replace the class for you. But I will do it after the first video, maybe when we have more people in. So right now, let's start the first video first, shall we? Okay, I have to apologize a little in advance because the topics today is on consumer behavior and business behavior. So it's a little bit dry kind of topic because there's a lot of abstract concepts for you to take into consideration. So definitely get your coffee. I'll need you guys to stay awake. I hope my voice doesn't become like a lullaby. So, right, let's go into the first video. For this chapter, we're going to be discussing about our customers. They are always the most important people in our value chain, and everything that we do for our customers. So, in order to provide value for them, we must first understand how they behave and how they react to our marketing efforts. As usual, we have the four different objectives of this chapter. First of all, we're going to look at a simple model of consumer buyer behavior. So this is theory. And then we're going to look at the four different factors that will influence consumers' buying behavior. So what kind of factors can influence what they choose to buy? And then we will go through the buyer decision process. And lastly, the diffusion of innovation, which is how consumers react to new products. So this is theory. And then we're going to look at the four different factors that will influence consumers' buying behavior. So what kind of factors can influence what they choose to buy? And then we will go through the buyer decision process. And lastly, the diffusion of innovation, which is how consumers react to new products. All right, let's start with a little bit of theory first. So what is the consumer buyer behavior? This is how final consumers and individuals like you and me buy goods for our own personal consumption. Okay, so consumer markets are made up of individuals and households that buy or acquire goods for personal consumption. This is the keyword. Consumers equals personal consumption. We do not use it for business purposes, nor do we resell the products. Right, so this is the theory I was talking about, the model of buyer behavior. So, very simple, we divide it into three different boxes. In the first box, we look at the environment. So this is our marketing efforts, right? In terms of our 4Ps, how are we trying to get to our customers? How are we trying to communicate with them? And then other factors which is out of our control. So macro environmental factors. So from all this, it's being absorbed by the consumers. So why do we call it a black box? This is because every consumer is unique and different. So each buyer has personal characteristics that are different, which we will discuss later in the next part. And also, each buyer go through the buying decision process differently. So how are they processing all this information? And then, of course, we have the response, whether they buy, how they buy, when they buy, how much they buy. So basically, this is the model of buyer behavior on a very high level. So what are the 4 different factors that will influence consumers' buyer behavior? There are 4 main factors here, which stems from cultural, social, personal, and psychological. So these are the different characteristics of our customers. And this is the black box because each and individual customers' culture, social, personal, and psychology is different. So there is no way for us to cater to individual customers because they are all different. So what we need to do is we need to classify and we need to know what kind of differences they are, and we try to specify them into groups, which is like what we do in our customer segmentation, right? So first, let's start with the culture.
That's pretty full.
Wants and behaviors learned by a member of society from family and other important institutions. In a very simple manner, culture is the way we behave in society, and it's something that is built up upon us from our experiences and as well as from the place where we live in. So different places will have different cultures, right? Uh, it's like in Malaysia, why do we love to hang out at the mama, go for a cup of teh tarik and have a roti canai? Well, it's our culture here. This is how we have been living, and this is how our ancestors have passed it on to us, as well as the development of our country and our society. So that is how a culture is formed. It is formed over time, over very long periods of time, and it is not something that is easily changed. Now, within cultures, we have subcultures. So they are a subset or a smaller group within the cultures. In Malaysia, we have many subcultures because of how diverse our population is. So the easiest way to divide up the subcultures in Malaysia is through our different races. So generally, each race will consume products quite differently from one another in terms of our races and our religion, right? Because there are different sets of rules and limitations that we have. So, for example, the Indians, or rather the Hindus, cannot eat beef because of their religion. So, consumption of beef within Hindus are practically zero. So in Malaysia, we also have Malays who practice Islam, and within their religion, they are not allowed to consume pork, and they need their foods to be certified halal to ensure that it is aligned with their religion. So these are the different subcultures which can determine how the consumers here are consuming products differently from one another. And so our job as marketeers is to understand how the culture works and try to work with the culture. Okay, because cultures are not something that is easily changed over a short period of time, right? So instead of trying to change the culture, we should be adapting and see how we can play within the rules of the culture. Under cultural factors, we also have social classes. So social classes are different members and different levels of society which falls under different categories, right? So usually social classes are divided by occupation and income, usually wealth. So you have the high, middle, and sort of low class members of society. Usually it is because of the amount of wealth that they have, which will determine their social classes. So a term that you guys might need to know, white collar workers are those generally working in offices, usually not doing any kind of physical labor, whereas blue collar workers are those that need to do hard manual labor. like construction workers or assembly line workers in a factory. So this is where the difference in income level comes, and as well as spending habits. So there's a story that I want to share with you. It's by a guy named Terry Pratchett, and it went something like this. A man earned $38 a month plus allowance, but a really good pair of leather boots will cost $50. An affordable pair of shoes only costs $10, but only lasts for a season or two and had to be replaced because it would wear out to be so thin. So those who could afford it would buy the leather boots and it will last around 10 years. The poor, by the end of 10 years, would have spent more than $100 on boots because it didn't last and still have their feet get wet, while those who can afford it would still have their feet dry after spending only $50. So the moral of the story is sometimes people don't get to choose what they want to buy, but they are dictated by the different circumstances that they are in. So the rich who could afford a pair of leather shoes would have a good pair of shoes that can last 10 years. Whereas every 2 or 3 seasons, the poor will have to buy a new pair of cheap shoe because that's all they can afford, and they will have to continue buying cheap pairs of shoe because it breaks so easily. So as marketers, what we need to know is we need to understand the different consumer behaviors so that we can adapt to their needs. Alright, so there are four main factors on consumer behavior. So the first one was cultural. Now the second one is social. Alright, so social is the people around us. The people around us can greatly influence our purchase decision. So there are different groups of people that we interact with. So there are three types of social networks that normal consumers are in. So first of all, the membership groups are the groups that we are already in. So like your group of friends, your group of families. So that is your membership group. Now, aspirational groups are those groups that you wish you were in. So maybe in school you have the group of popular kids and you wish that you belong in that group instead. So that is what we call an aspirational group. And sometimes you also might wish that you can live the lifestyle of an influencer. So those are also considered your aspirational groups. Whereas reference groups serve as a direct or indirect points of comparison or reference informing a person's attitude or behavior. So in this slide, you can see the different types of groups that influence the consumer's buying decision process, like the kind of Facebook groups that you join, the people that you follow on social media, and the types of YouTube videos that you watch. By the way, the correct term for influencers is actually opinion leaders, or the industry will actually use KOL, which is key opinion leaders. So who knows, maybe some of you are already in this industry and you might be some popular KOL that I don't know about. So obviously as marketers, what our job is, we want to be able to reach all these strong opinion leaders because we can use them to amplify and to send our messages to a large mass of people at once, and they are more likely to be influenced by these people into buying different types of products. So in the past 2 years, you can see that Samsung has been aggressively using KOLs and social media as well as influencers to run their product launches and their campaigns. So you will see people like in Malaysia, Genie Boy, Shu Fei, and Epicism to promote the newest and greatest Samsung phones. And they will get them to attend the events so that all the large number of followers will constantly be um, introduced to these new products that they are launching all the time. So in 2014, Mercedes ran a campaign, right? So then they launched their new CLA, which is their entry level car. In this campaign, they challenged the top 5 Instagram photographers to post photos of this new car. So in 5 days, whoever that got the most likes will get to keep the CLA. So, what was Mercedes's cost to run this campaign? One car, all right? That's it, just one car. But as a result, they got a reach, which is how many people saw their new product launch, was 87 million people. And in the end, they got 2 million likes on the post of these 5 different influencers. So if you divide out the cost of one car over the total number of reach that they have gotten, actually the cost of exposing the advertisement to each person is less than 1 cent per customer. So this is an example of a very successful campaign that was ran by Mercedes using uh, key opinion leaders. However, at the end of the day, our greatest influencer is still our family members, which has been proven by research over and over again. Think about it. Why did you choose to come to Taylor's University to study? So chances are it's influenced by your parents or maybe your older siblings. So through research, we have found that the most influential members are always family members, whether it is parents, our spouse, children, or even our siblings. So roles and statuses also play an important role in consumer behavior. So people will buy the kind of products that will reflect their role and status. So what do I mean? One person can have multiple roles and status. So for example, a man at work, he's a manager, and at home, he is a husband or a father. And then at a sports event, he may support a certain team. So sports guy, maybe let's say, I don't know, football. So for work, what kind of clothing would he wear? He would wear a maybe suit and tie to reflect that he's a manager. And as a husband or a father, he may be wearing a ring to show that he is a married person. And as a sports fan, he may wear the team's jersey to show that he is supporting a particular team. So roles and statuses can change the kind of products that a consumer behaves and buys, because they would want the clothing and the products that they use to reflect their roles and statuses. So now we've come to the third of the 4 factors. We've covered cultural and social factors so far. The third one is personal factors, and we start with the age and life cycle stage. So as a person grows up from young to old, they tend to change their spending habits over time, right? So this is because of the different um, age and needs at different times, occupation, economic situations, lifestyle, personality, and self-concepts. So as a person grow up, initially they may not have an income, so the amount of things that they can buy are limited. And as children, we are more prone to buying toys or products for our entertainment, or books even for reading and for education purposes. But as we grow older and we have developed our hobbies and interests, so when you reach the maybe young working adult age, you have money to indulge in your hobbies. So say if you are interested in music, then you will spend your income on hi-fi audio kind of equipments, as well as, maybe if you are into golf, then you will spend money on playing golf. So as we develop and grow over the years, our habits, our spending habits will change, and it reflects our age and our life cycle stage. Well, obviously, your occupation will also affect the goods and services that you buy, because the types of occupation that you have will determine the kind of income that you have. So that will also determine your spending power. And as mentioned just now, if you are a white collar worker or a blue collar worker, the kind of products and services that you buy will considerably differ, right? So if you are let's say, in the UK, right, white and blue collar workers, their wage gap is actually not that big. So construction workers may actually earn higher or sometimes similar rates with surgeons in the UK. So, but as a construction worker, the kind of clothing that you buy for work, for example, you are doing a very labor intensive job, right? So it does not make sense for you to buy suit and tie for you to go for work. So whereas maybe you may look for more rugged clothing like jeans, and maybe polo tees, and that is more suitable for your kind of job, right? So that's how the your occupation can affect the type of goods that you buy. So economic situations include the trends in all of these four different factors. So most importantly, what we need to know is that there are shorter recession cycles now. So instead, it used to maybe take 10 or 20 years for one recession to occur, but now it's becoming shorter, less than 10 years, like from down to 8 or maybe 5 years, you will have a very big recession. And of course, when COVID hit in 2020, it also affected the way consumers are spending because they are becoming more frugal. So that is why we see in online shopping, products tend to become very price sensitive, right? Because consumers themselves have become more price sensitive. Similarly, there are more everyday low price stores popping up around. So this is to reflect the kind of economic situations that we are in, as well as the consumer's spending pattern. So lifestyle is a person's pattern of living as expressed in psychographics, right? So in psychographics, we have lifestyle as one of the main factors. So what kind of products you consume will also show what kind of lifestyle that you have. So if you are a um, tech savvy guy or a technology enthusiast, so you will buy a lot of the latest gadgets, right? The newest phones, the newest laptops, or the best performing ones. And if you are a ethical consumer, right? So if you are a person who cares a lot about the environment and the world that we live in, so you tend to shop for products that reflect this lifestyle. So companies like the Body Shop claims that they are very ethical, so they do not test the products on animals, and they make sure that their products are made from sustainable materials. So if you want to show that you are a ethical consumer, then you will buy from shops like this. So different lifestyle will dictate different types of products bought and consumed. Now, personality under personal factors will be the different kind of psychological characteristics that can use to differentiate a person or a group. So there are many ways to classify and identify personality. We have from the type A and type B. So we also have the five big personalities. So in the type A personality, we have competitive people, aggressive, and also time urgent. So type B is the total opposite of the above, right? So obviously, the types of personality that we have will also differentiate the kind of products that we buy. So in a way, we can also say that the type A people are the more extroverts, right? So they are more outgoing and they love to socialize and mix with people. Whereas the type B people might be more close to introverts and they prefer to stay with themselves. They are alone, they are relaxed most of the time, they are not aggressive, and they are non-competitive. So obviously with these two different type of personalities, they will buy different kind of products. So the type A kind of personality might go for high fashion brands. They might go for products that will reflect the kind of social class or the lifestyle that they are in, because they love to go out and socialize with people. So how people view them is very important in their mind. So that's why they tend to dress well. They tend to buy different kind of products that may show that they are in a certain social class or they belong in a certain group. Whereas the type B, they might choose to dress more normal, so they would not go for expensive, high fashion, fast moving kind of goods because they don't really care how people view them. So that's it for the third factor. And now we are moving on to the fourth big factor, which is psychological factors. In psychological factors, we have four subcategories, which are motivation, perception, learning, beliefs, and attitude. Right. So this is also deeply ingrained in the mind of consumers, but sometimes it is subconscious. So they may not be fully aware or thinking about this all the time. And so let's move into each of them, shall we? So starting with motivation. So a motivation is a drive or an act. So sometimes it's like when you are hungry. So what will you do? Naturally, you will look for food. And so there are different wants or needs that a person will have at different times, which will drive them to look for different kind of products and services. So sometimes consumers can't describe exactly why they buy the certain kind of things that they buy. There is a different mix of elements in there. It can come from physical needs, it can come from wants, it can come from needs, or it could be something that is related to emotions. So that it is not really a very clear cut answer as to why they would buy the certain kind of things that they buy. However, that does not mean that we cannot classify them. So this is a model, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this model explains why people are driven by particular needs at particular times. So why does one person spend a lot of time on food? So because they have physiological needs. Okay, so basically this pyramid says that in order to reach the next level, you must first satisfy the lower level. All right, so it goes in a upwards order. Now, under Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have five different levels. The first level is physiological needs, which is the most basic human survival needs, which include food, water, sufficient rest, clothing, shelter, and overall health. So once we achieve that, we can move on to safety needs. And safety needs refer to security and protection. So this is where we need protection from violence and theft. We need a um, emotional stability, as well as health and financial security. And then in the third level, we have social needs. This is where we need friends, we need family, we need a person to love and for us to feel loved. In the fourth one, we have esteem needs. This is where we have ego driven needs. So this is where we need to have self esteem, right? So we need to be recognized and have a status. So that's why, according to this little box here, it says that starving people will take little interest in the latest happenings in the art world, right? So obviously, if you can't fill your stomach, you can't be bothered to be thinking about art. So that's why each levels have to be fulfilled accordingly, one by one. Right, the first three are what we call lower order needs, and the top two are what we call higher order needs. So in esteem needs, we can break it down further into two different types. The first one, which is based on respect and acknowledgement from others. So we want to be recognized. And second, which is esteem, which is how you view yourself, right? So you need to have self-confidence and to have independence from self-esteem. Now, in the last one, we have self-actualization needs. This describes the fulfillment of your full potential as a person. So what is it that you are able to achieve? And this includes things like education, skill development. So I'm sure most of you have come to tailors to study because you are trying to fulfill your self-actualization needs, right? You have already completed your secondary school or high school, and now you want to move on to an even further level to develop yourself. Okay, so that's why you are here for self-actualization needs. So obviously, at different levels of our needs, we have different buying behaviors. So to give you examples on based on Maslow's, so we have esteem needs, for example. So why do you think people in their 40s and 50s start to buy luxury items, expensive sports cars and expensive houses? or because they want to be recognized by themselves and others that they have achieved something in their life. And for you as students, if you feel that you don't really belong in a university or you don't feel motivated to study, so go back and look at your first three levels of needs. Have they been fulfilled? But the fact that you are able to be here in Taylor's, it most probably shows that you have achieved the first three. So maybe you have not achieved self-esteem or recognition yet because you have not started working, right? So you have not achieved certain things in your life. So you don't feel motivated to study because you keep thinking about money. You want to earn a living, you want to achieve certain things before you feel that you can move on to self-actualization needs. But I think that now this is a bit has been turned in a way, because when you are studying, you gain knowledge, and knowledge is power, which will help you to achieve your esteem needs quicker. All right. So even though it may be more difficult, but since you have your parents and family supports to be here, so you should make the best of your education. Now, besides motivation, perception is also a psychological factor that can affect our buying decision. Whatever products there are out there, it might be perceived differently by each individual. So let's take a look at examples of these advertisements, which are called subliminal advertisements, right? So the one on the left is the original advertisement, but the one on the right is what the message is trying to be sent through the advertisement itself. So obviously, you might not even see this thing here, but the fact is that our brain can process information in a manner that we cannot really fully understand. So subliminal advertising is actually trying to stimulate the subconscious mind into associating these products with a certain kind of attributes, and would make customers want to buy them for reasons entirely unrelated. So although research has shown that subliminal advertising actually do not work, but some companies are still very interested in it and they are still trying to do it. So in this KFC advertisement, the value proposition is that the burger is 99 cents. But in terms of subliminal advertising, they have hidden a $1 bill in the letters of the burger. So this will give you the perception that this product is very value for money because it only costs $1, and they use psychological pricing, which gives you a perception of 99 cents. So using this collectively supposedly will help consumers to feel that this is a very value for product money. Although once again, as mentioned, subliminal advertising in research has been found to actually not work. Now, another psychological factor that can affect our buying is actually from learning. So the more we learn about a product and how to use it, the more we can change the way we perceive a product or how we are going to buy it. So let's take, for example, if you have bought a Canon camera. So at first, you're not confident because you have no skills and you don't know how to use it. But as you learn how to use it and you are familiar with it, you feel that it can satisfy your needs to take good photos and videos, right? So next time when you are looking for another camera, chances are you will go back and buy Canon's camera because you are already used to their interface and how to control the device. Now, the next one is a belief. A belief is a thought that a person holds about something, while an attitude is a person's consistent evaluation about a product. So this goes back to our very first lecture, and actually in every lecture I will mention the word value. So take Burberry for example. When you think of this brand, you will think of it as a luxury high fashion label. This is because the company has positioned themselves this way by launching modern campaigns, by combining their signature designs with something new, and using famous models to endorse their products. Okay, so that covers the four different bases of consumers. Now let's move on to the types of buying decisions. All right, so that's the first part of consumer behavior. We have four different main factors within customers that will dictate why they buy certain things and how they buy certain things. So everybody's still alive. I think it's a little bit dry, the topic itself, and it's very abstract because it's nothing that you can see, right? So four different factors: cultural, social, personal, and psychological. Okay, so if we understand these things about our consumers, then when we are trying to sell stuff to them, we can work around it. Okay, so one thing about consumer behavior is if we understand customers' perception, in a way we can sort of influence them to think of certain things, right? So let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, so can you see this? All right, so this is a video showing you the two different sizes of McDonald's soda, right? So let's have a look at the video first.
Two size, large, medium, one more dollar.
Right. So as you've seen, the using the medium size cup, they're able to fill the large size cup as well, and they charge you an extra dollar for that in the US. I think later on the video was debunked because I think somebody found out that there was already ice in the larger cup. Okay, but that's besides the point. The point is that sometimes the shapes of the containers can influence the way consumers think. So sometimes when you see how the container is shaped flat versus a tall container, you might think that the taller one will have more volume, but actually they might be the same. This is something that is commonly done as well. And another thing about consumer behavior is also in how they consume the products, right? So this is something interesting that is I've noticed myself, and actually I found it to be true because after that I went to research about it. But if you eat at McDonald's, right, sometimes you feel that it's not full after you have one burger and one cup of drink, right? Okay, it's not because I'm fat. Okay, there's a reason for it. So um, whereas if you go to KFC, you have a one piece chicken, but if you finish the drink, you will be very, very full. So I was curious why this was happening. And one thing I noticed was actually the size of the straws. Okay. The size of the straw will influence the way you drink your beverage and as well as the amount of air that you intake, right? So the straw at McDonald's are actually of a larger diameter. So in that way, when you drink it faster. Okay. So when you drink fast, your brain does not have enough time to process that your stomach is already full. Okay. So in that sense, I think McDonald's might be trying to influence you so that you continue to go and buy their desserts and their coffee or something else. So that is one of the strategies. Now at KFC, they give you a very small straw. So the diameter of the straw is much smaller, which means that you need to uh, drink more slowly, which means you take more time to drink, as well as you will inhale more air with the smaller straw. So in that way, your stomach is filled with more air and you take more time to do it, which will make you think that you are full, right? So in that way, they are trying to tell you that KFC meals are actually more filling because if just one piece of chicken and a small cup of drink, you are able to fill your stomach. So the value perception of KFC is that they are very cheap and they are very full, right? So this is something that I've personally experienced and I'm just sharing with you. So the next time I want you to go and check it out yourself and try it out and think about it. When you eat at KFC versus McDonald's, which one feels more full? And then try and have a good look at the straw, whether it's different or not. Right? So that's just an interesting story to share. So, sir, does size matter? Hmm. That's a very tough question. So, are you going to make your burger buns more fluffy so that it looks bigger, but it actually is the same weight as a smaller bun? You know, because there's more air, it's more fluffy. So a bigger bun will make the burger look bigger, right? So it messes with your customer perception. Okay, so more bigger means more full. Um, Not necessarily, I think. If it's bigger, but in terms of let's say volume or weight is the same, then it doesn't really matter, right? Because in the end you're consuming the same amount. But because your perception is distorted already, you might think that you are more full, or you might think that it's more value for money. And one more thing. So since we are on the topic of this, let me share with you. Okay, let's see. Okay, so um, another thing is when A&W tried to attack McDonald's as well. Okay, I did a lot of research in food, especially fast food, because that's what my PhD thesis was on. So that's why a lot of my examples always revolve around food as well. Um, okay, so if you can see this, in the 1980s, A&W tried to compete with McDonald's quarter pounder by selling a 1/3 pound burger at a lower cost. Okay, so first thing first, get your measurements right. Yeah, quarter pounder, which means it's 1/4 of a pound. Okay, 1/3 pounder, if you put it to percentage, is 33% of a pound, whereas quarter pounder is 25% of a pound. Okay, yeah, you got that straight, right? But consumers couldn't comprehend this in the US. Okay, they think that a quarter pounder is bigger because it's 1/4, but in actual fact it's smaller. So that's why A&W's marketing strategy failed terribly in the end and they had to scrap this product. Okay, so you need to understand your consumers and how you are going to promote your marketing materials to them. And you have to make sure that they understand your marketing materials. A&W was trying to provide more burger at a cheaper price, but they couldn't get it. So be careful in your marketing materials when you're trying to send a message. Okay, there's a lot of funny stories like this that happen actually. Okay, so any questions on consumer behavior so far? If Asia can, we all can math. Yeah, yeah, I think so. Honestly, I hope so. Okay, so before we move on to the next video, I actually need to tell you guys about something else. Okay, so next week, this coming week is Chinese New Year, right? So in next Monday is still part of the Chinese New Year celebration. So it's a holiday. Um, which means that I have to replace the last lecture that we are gonna have together. So we don't have much time, and actually this Thursday I believe is the last day. Uh, So I'm gonna create a straw poll. So you guys will vote which time slot you prefer. Or okay, so there is a few. It's all on Thursday because Thursday is the last day, and Wednesday I still have other classes, so I can't do the lecture on that day. So right, we have either Thursday 10 to 12, 12 to 2, or 2 to 4. So I'm gonna let you guys choose that. Or would you prefer a pre-recorded lecture? So I will just record the lecture like I always do, and I will just upload it so that you guys can see it. If you would prefer that, then yeah, by all means vote for that. So there are 38 of you guys here. I guess I will just go with the majority. Is that fine? I will put the link here. So I'm going to give you guys some time to go and vote for it. Yeah. This chapter is about psychological manner. Hasanin, I think if you haven't realized, entire principles of marketing is very much on actually psychology. You know, we are dealing with how customers think and how we are trying to react to them, how we're trying to capture them to think the way that we want to think. So, yeah, definitely a lot of psychology involved. Sir, can't copy link. Can? You can't? Oh, uh, oops. I'm. I think it's working. There's already a lot of votes coming in here. Like this chapter is more defined. Well, I guess you can say that. It says YouTube can't, but it seems to be fine for everybody. Right. How am I gonna get it to you? Right. Which one do you want to vote, Hamza? I'll just vote it for you then. I'll just add one. I'll just add one for you later. All right. Nice. So Hassanin, actually, consumer behavior itself is one other subject. Um, let me show you something. Right. I don't know if you can see this. Not yet. Okay. Right. It's not picking up very well. So as you can see, um, consumer behavior is actually one entire book on its own. So in the principles of marketing, it's just a chapter. So it covers the very basics of it. But in consumer behaviors, we really dive deep into how we can influence our consumers in different ways. Um, it's not in it they don't talk about it being good or bad in a way, but it really teaches you how you can mess with your consumers head, and you mess with their perception, and make them buy your things, right? So this book is actually a very good tool if you want to do marketing. But yeah, it's another subject on its own. So I don't know if they're still offering it now, but if they do and you're interested, then you can definitely go take this. So, marketing and consumer behavior is very closely related to psychology. So, if you want to be good in marketing, you have to be good in psychology because you are trying to influence your customers to think the way that you want them to think without them realizing that you're doing that. Huh. So, it's really a mind game, right? So, let's take a look at the votes. So I guess from this straw poll, I'm not getting a lot of votes. There's still about 15 of you that haven't voted. So I guess the majority is going towards pre-recorded lecture. I guess I will go towards that instead. So yeah, sorry about that. I didn't ask for a public holiday to be then. So I guess it's there. So if 1-to-1 on Thursday can Thursday is already a holiday. No, Thursday is the night, the reunion dinner night, correct? So I don't think it's holiday yet. Holiday officially starts on Friday, which is the first day of Chinese New Year. 1-to-1 on Thursday? No lah, I gotta record and put it up as soon as possible so that everyone can view it, right? I can't just do it 1-to-1 like that. Okay, so based on the votes, I guess I will pre-record it first. It's gone even higher now, it's at 80%. Sorry, man. Reunion dinner considered holiday. No, this year's reunion holiday, reunion dinner is terrible. I can't meet with any of my relatives as well. So, yeah, when you record, I can join you. Oh, no, 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 no. You can't join me when I record. I'd be cursing a lot because I keep forgetting what I want to say. Um, so you don't wanna hear this recording session. Go pasar malam. Yeah, yeah, that's a good idea. Brilliant. Maybe I'll do my reunion dinner at the car wash instead or at the barber shop, you know? Yeah, for those of you who are not in Malaysia and you don't know, in the midst of the current lockdown, our government has decided that the night markets, a car wash, and barber shops are allowed to be open. So, no comments. Okay, so decided then I will pre-record the videos and I'll put it up. And now we shall go into the next video. All right, so next one is a short one. It's actually the continuation of the same lecture. So let's just have a look at it. It's the buyer decision process, which is the steps consumers go through when they want to buy a product. Okay. Decision and the stages in the buyer decision. Now let's move on to the types of buying decision and the stages in the buyer decision process. So we have 4 different types of buying behavior, and it can be seen from this table here that it is the difference between involvement as well as the difference between the brands, right? So low involvement products are from products that are cheap and relatively we do not need to put a lot of thoughts into buying the product. Whereas high involvement products, we need to think a lot about it because they are more expensive products and we do not buy them so often, right? And then between the difference of brands, whether there is a few or a lot of differences. Okay, so um, as usual, we have many other models in this same matrix. So from low involvement and significant differences, we have variety seeking. So basically the 4 different here, we will go through in examples. Now the first one, in complex buying behavior, we have high involvement products as well as significant differences. So in products like laptops, it is a high involvement products because it's not something that we buy often. It's relatively expensive. And between the many different brands, they have their own set of features and many differences. So we need to think a lot about it. And that's what we call a complex buying behavior. Now in the second quadrant, we have dissonance reducing buying behavior, where there is high involvement but there is little differences among brands. Okay, so why did I show a picture of a living room with furnitures in it? So a good example of these are actually expensive carpets. Okay, so in carpets, there are functions have not much difference, right? Even different between brands. Carpets function basically the same. They are rug, so they are a piece of cloth on the floor. Basically, that's it. But they are high involvement products because you don't buy carpets or change them very often, as well as carpets can actually be very expensive, especially those that are higher quality ones, right? So that's why this is an example of dissonance reducing buying behavior, carpets. Now, the third one is called the habitual buying behavior. In this, we have low involvement products and little differences between them. Okay, so as usual, table salt is something that is low involvement. It's relatively cheap to buy. And as well as between different brands, salt function the same. They are salty. Now, the last one is what we call the variety seeking buying behavior. In this category, it is low involvement products, but big differences between the brands. Okay, so chocolates are considered low involvement products, right? But if you were to buy different brands of chocolate, they generally have different taste profiles, they have different flavors. So even within Kit Kat itself, they have many different flavors, right? From the different countries as shown here. So, and another example that is a variety seeking buying behavior, I think which I am personally guilty of as well, is actually from bubble tea. So bubble tea, generally they are low involvement because they are not very expensive, so to speak. And between the different brands, they have slightly different taste in their milk teas. So when I want to go and try all the different flavors, hence variety seeking. And yeah, so I will try to go and buy all the different brands and to try them each time. Now, for the next part, we will go into the buyer decision process. So, in the buyer decision process, it is the 5 steps that consumers will take when they are buying a product. So, obviously, the buying decision happens before and after the actual purchase itself. So, what do I mean by this? First of all, in order to buy something, we must recognize a need or a want first. So, the first stage is need recognition. So, in terms of need recognition, we can have internal and external stimuli. So, let's say we are hungry. So, it is the stomach growling and it is an internal stimuli. But we can also be scrolling Facebook and we saw an ad for, let's say, fried chicken, right? So that is an external stimuli, which makes you feel that you need food. In the second stage, we have information search. This is where we start to look for information on what kind of food or what we want to buy. So maybe you take out your phone and you open Grab Food and you start scrolling for the different types of food available there. But because you've seen fried chicken advertisements, so you narrow down your search to fried chickens. Okay, yeah, as seen here. So actually, this whole process can be shown through purchase in Grab. But let's move on to the next step. So in the third step, you've narrowed down your search to all the different brands of fried chicken in the Grab app. So you have Texas chicken, you have KFC, you have K-Fry, and so on. So let's say today you have the mood for Texas chicken, right? So you buy Texas chicken. What right? So in the third step, you evaluate between the 3 different brands or more, and then you decide which one you would want to buy. Okay. Then the fourth stage is the actual purchase decision itself. And then once you have bought and you have eaten the product, we move on to post-purchase behavior. So in post-purchase behavior, you have an initial expectation, right? And when you've eaten the food, whether you are satisfied or not depends on whether your initial expectation was met. So sometimes when we don't feel satisfied, we also have this thing what we call a cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance happens when the initial expectations were not met and you've always held this belief or this value. So for example, based on your previous experiences, you've always thought that Texas chicken is the best fried chicken there is. But based on the food that you had today, it's not it's not good. So that's why you can experience cognitive dissonance. But usually this happens more in high involvement products. So like when you buy a car, and then when you are driving the car and you feel that you are not satisfied with the performance of the car, whereas before you bought it, you've always had this initial thought and this expectation of the product. So when it's not met, we have this situation where we call a cognitive dissonance. So what happens when you are satisfied or dissatisfied? So few things tend to happen. First of all, we have word of mouth. So if it is extremely good, chances are you will also keep telling people that, wow, Texas chicken is the best. But if it is bad, then you will also tell people that Texas chicken is horrible. Please don't buy it, don't eat it, right? Or if it's like, let's say from the KL branch, so maybe you will specifically criticize that branch. So obviously this can be positive or negative. To recap the buyer decision process, the first step is need recognition, where you feel that there is an internal or external stimuli that tells you there is a need for you to buy something, and then you will go and look for more information on it, and then you choose between all the different alternatives, the pros and cons of each, and then you buy it, and then your post-purchase behavior, whether you are satisfied or not with your purchase. Alright, for the last part of this lecture is the diffusion process for new products. So what is the diffusion of innovation? It just basically means that people adopt products at a different rate. So if you look at this picture, when there is a new product that is launched, people will adopt the products at different times. So let's say a new iPhone is released. So the first person, those who queue up in front of the Apple stores, overnight, those hardcore people, those are what we call the innovators. And then we have the early adopters, which are people still quite early, and they will like to try out new technologies, and they don't mind taking a little bit of risk. So maybe like the first batch of the products, how sometimes in phones they have little problems here and there. And then in the early mainstream, they like to observe first whether the first batch of products is working well or not, and then they will adopt the product, right? The late mainstream are those people who um, do not like to take risks, so they prefer to know that the product is working well, and then they will start to buy the products. And then lastly, we have the lagging adopters, or we call the laggards. These are people who do not mind using older products, and they are more cost conscious, right? So as the product goes through its life cycle, so this is maybe towards the maturity or decline stage, and these products are bought by price sensitive customers, because by then these products usually have a reduction in price as a new model or a new version is coming out soon. So that's the 5 different types of buyers for new products. So what factors can influence the rate of adoption from what we've seen from the previous chart? First one is relative advantage, which means how the new product is superior to the older ones. Compatibility is how easily the new products can fit consumers' value and experience. Complexity is how easy or difficult the new product is to use. And then divisibility is whether they are able to try the new product before they buy, right? So that's why in the Apple store, or in the mobile phone stores, they always display the phone out for you to try it out. So that is to improve their divisibility, as well as cars that allow you to test drive them. Yeah, they all fall under this uh, characteristic. And then lastly, we have communicability, which is the degree when using this new innovation can be shown or described to others. So if you are using the latest iPhone, they will have certain features at the back that will differentiate it from the older iPhones. So you are able to show people that you are using this new product. All right, so these are the 5 different factors that can affect the rate of adoption. And that's all for this chapter. Now, all right, that was a short and sweet second part to the chapter. So Very simple actually. The buyer decision process is the process that consumers will use when they want to buy something. So first of all, it's the signal, right? The signal is very important. So either internal, external, it can be something that happened to you, something that you see, you hear. So that's what is going to influence you. So what's coming up for the finals? I wonder what's coming out for the finals. I will have a revision class in the last tutorial, so don't worry. I will definitely go through that. I will cut out some of the chapters so that you guys don't have to study everything. Yeah, don't worry. Chill. Principles of marketing is easy subject. It's a year one business subject, right? So no problem for you guys. Okay, um so just now we've seen the video about the McDonald's and the drinks that they were pouring, and they show that actually, it was fake because it was debunked. Somebody actually went to buy and tried out again, but they couldn't replicate the study. So instead, I've devised my own experiments to show you guys today. Okay, so this is a cup. All right, you can see the cup is empty, right? So there's no ice. I can't fake it. And here, ironically, is a McDonald's cup that I bought for $10. Okay, so I've already filled this cup with water. I don't know if you can see, but it's very very full. Like it's all the way to the brim, right? So if you were to put the two cups side by side, um, it's obvious that one is shorter than the other. And without thinking too much, normal consumers would automatically assume that this cup is the larger cup and can hold more liquid, right? Even I thought of that at first. So let's see what happens. Feel like a science class now, man. Let me show you these things live. So empty, yeah. Not faking it. This is completely full, as you can see. Yep. So I'm able to fill this cup completely empty as well. So this is how marketeers can mess with a consumer's mind. It Both these cups are actually the same volume, but because of the shape, it gives that perception that the cup is actually larger than it is. Okay. So this is done live. This is proven to you. It's not something that I just found on the internet. Okay. And then, so what do you think about that? Isn't it ironic that uh for how people have tried to help McDonald's by debunking the claims, but in the end they still come up with cups and designs that make it seem like you are getting more value out of your money. So there are many different little ways in which companies are messing with you that you might not even know about. Okay, so right. In my products chapter, first of the four P's, right? I think I mentioned something about labels and about packaging of the products, which can also give you the impression that you're buying a good or high quality kind of product, right? So um, here in front of me, I have this supplement, which actually I have no idea what it does. But look at the packaging design that they have made, right? So the name itself is California Gold, and they've made the word golden color, as well as this I'll call it the rims. The rims of the bottle is gold. So what does that automatically make you perceive the product to be, right? Because gold color is associated with jewelry, which is the real gold. So it gives you a perception the product is very high end and high quality. Okay, so these are little subtle ways in which companies can try and mess with your head. And if you don't think about it, you probably won't even notice it at all. But at the back of your mind, these are things that you already know. So automatically you associate these details with those attributes. right? And since we are taking a bottle of supplements, I'm going to show you, where is it? Right. Um, this claim here. So in terms of labels and packaging, I think I've mentioned before that um, scientific research actually shows that supplements don't do much unless you have a very severe condition that requires you to take that thing. So here, what does this product say? Supports cognitive health. What does that even mean? Right? So these are the way that companies are getting around laws and regulations by putting claims that will not get them sued by consumers in the case that it does not provide the health benefits that it promises that it does. Okay, so this is things that are going on, and I've always been talking about it in theory, but I think that I should show it in real life as well. So I hope that you guys really learn something from this subject, and yeah, so don't waste so much money on supplements. Um, take it if you need it, but you don't have to be excessive about it, right? So any questions for me so far? Everything good? Everything okay? Okay, so I'm going to switch things up a bit today. We're going to take attendance now. Everybody, please get your cams ready. Let's play some music. Exam tips, please. Why you're so kiasu? You know what is kiasu or not? Kiasu, kiasu literally means afraid of losing. Guys, don't be so kiasu. Think about what you really learn from this subject and what you can do in the future. That's more important. Alright, everybody got your cams ready? The fact that we are learning these tricks companies use, won't we eventually be doing the same? So um, that's really a gray area about it, isn't it? So we in the real marketing world, there's no such thing as black and white. Like there are claims that Milo, these are claims, these are not confirmed, these are claims that in Milo, they actually hold meetings to label sugar in a different way. Okay, so because everybody starts to have more knowledge and awareness that sugar is not good for your health, so what Nestle is doing is they're holding meetings with their employees to find how are they going to label sugar as a different name so that customers can won't know about it so easily. So what do you think about that? Is that wrong? Yes, kiasu is Singaporeans. You're right. I shall run this for 5 minutes and then yeah, later before lecture ends, maybe I'll run it for another 5 minutes. Okay, I think actually most of you have already taken the attendance, so I'm just gonna leave it running. Yeah. Yes, because there are a lot of people with health issues, and for kids, it's bound to be bad. Well, what if you were in that person's position? What if it's your job to market this product to children because we realize children love to drink sugary drinks, and it's your job to promote this healthy chocolate drink to them. So it becomes a contradiction, isn't it? Because you have to do your job, but at the same time, it's might not be the right thing. Okay, we the next chapter actually is on corporate social responsibilities, how marketing is influencing all these things that's happening in the world. Um, I've pre-recorded it, but as usual, when exporting the video, I think something went off, and I can't play back the video. So that unfortunately have to be uploaded online for you guys to view as well. Okay, so for now, I am going to move on to the next video. So just now, the first two videos, we learned about consumer behavior, how they are influenced, what factors can influence consumers, right? From social, psychological, cultural, right? So now we are moving into the business market. So they are quite similar in a sense, but you will find out that there are some key differences as well, right? So let's move on to the next video, business market behavior. We have covered the consumer buying behavior. In this chapter, we will look at how business buyers behave. As we know, business buyers differ from the normal consumers because they buy products to use for resale or to be processed into further products. Okay, so it is very similar to the consumer buying behavior, but instead it is now in the business context. So what we call B2B is business to business, and B2C stands for business to consumer. Normal consumers because they buy products to use for resale or to be processed into further products. Okay, so it is very similar to the consumer buying behavior, but instead it is now in the business context. So what we call B2B is business to business, and B2C stands for business to consumer. So in this chapter, it is very much B2B marketing. Okay, so let's start. At the very core, the first key difference between B2C and B2B is how they use the product that they buy. In B2C, we buy the product to be consumed by the end consumers. But in B2B markets, we buy the product so that we can produce it into other products or services that is sold, rented, or supplied to others. So people like retailers, people like wholesalers, and even manufacturers are considered B2B markets. Okay, and in the business buying process, remember we have the 5 steps in the consumer decision process. Well, the B2B one is a bit more complex because more people are involved and the purpose of the products are also different. So how is the B2B market different from the B2C market? Mainly, it is from these 4 main key points, right? As compared to B2C, we have fewer but larger buyers. So of course, in corporates, we usually have less companies that buy, but they may buy in larger quantities per time. Whereas the end consumers usually buy things in very small quantities because they only use it for personal consumption. So for example, if you get milk, right? If end consumers will only buy 1-2 liters of milk to be used at home. Whereas if I was a cafe and I would need to buy milk for my coffee, I would buy in maybe 50 or 100 liters a day in order to meet the demands of my customers. So fewer but larger buyers. In the second point of derived demand, this is where it means that business products are only needed when they are consumer products, right? Because the goal of B2B is to eventually get it to B2C customers as well, but they are in a different part of the value chain. So that's why the demand here is actually comes from B2C demand. So let's say you have from manufacturer to wholesalers to retailers and then to the end consumer, right? So let's say now you are a manufacturer. So and you need let's say you are producing computers. So you are going to need processors, right? You're going to need CPUs. So in order to gauge how many CPUs that you're going to buy, you will need to depend on the consumer's demand. So let's say you are the producer, you are Dell, right? So how much CPU do you need to buy from Intel will depend on what is the demand of your product from your consumers. So that's what it means by derived demand. The demand that comes from here, it ultimately derives from the demand for consumer goods. Inelastic demand, this means that businesses will not suddenly buy a lot or lesser just because there is a slight fluctuation in the price. For example, you are a shoe manufacturer. So the price of leather has dropped by 10 cents, right? Not just because of something like this, you're going to immediately increase your stocks and buy a lot more raw material. Instead, when it will only make sense for producers to buy much more when the changes in the price is very great. Whereas compared to consumers, if I were to buy something from Speedmart and KK Mart next door, if the price difference might be 20 cents, 10 cents or 20 cents, I might buy from the shop that is cheaper. So that's what it means by inelastic demand. And lastly, fluctuating demand means that the demand for business products will always be fluctuating and changing much more quickly. So in the business markets, the buying process becomes much more complicated because many people are involved. So we need a more professional purchasing effort as well, because it is not something that is bought for personal consumption. And because of that, we need more buyer and seller interaction. Because of the amount of money involved in B2B products, we need more people to help to make that decision, right? There are complex technical and economic considerations, and the process tends to be much more longer and formalized. Whereas in a B2C market, you can just immediately go buy your products and go. Whereas in the B2B market, we have a set of processes that we need to go through before we can finalize the purchase. There are a lot more documentation in place. So this is to ensure that funds of the company are not embezzled and used without proper regulations and guidance. So supplier deployment is the systematic development of networks of supplier partners. So what this means is a company usually does not rely only on one supplier to get products for them. Can you imagine if you are Walmart and you are holding 25,000 different items in your store, right? And if you are relying on one or two suppliers to get maybe say 20% of your products, and when that supplier cannot meet your demands or cannot supply it to you, then you will have no goods to sell to your customers. So now it becomes a complex relationship because we need to develop a network of suppliers to make sure that the goods in our store is always enough for our production use, for our customers to buy, or even for reselling purposes. Okay, so now let's take a look at the business buying behavior. This is a familiar picture, right? In the first one is actually the same. We have our 4Ps and our stimuli, our external factors that can affect our buyers. So in the B2C market, this is where the individual buyer is, and we have here what we call the black box. So the black box is the individual person's factors, right? Like culture, like their social, and so on. And instead here we have the buying organization, right? It is a bit more complex, and then the buying decision process is slightly longer and more different because of the formalized processes. And of course, in the end, we have the buyer response. This is like how the business is buying the products and what kind of decisions do they need to make in order to uh, get the purchase done. All right, so the first one is the same, it's the 4P as well as external factors. But instead, let's take a look at the type of buying situations that a business may have. Since B2Cs buy it for end consumption, that's the end of the story. But in B2B's buying behaviors, they may have different uh, users for each time. So that's why we have the fluctuating demand just now, because the demand is always changing in the business market. So when how they buy is also something that might change, or there are different ways how they would buy their product. So four types of buying situations. First one is straight rebuy. So this is a routine reorder. So for example, if you are a retailer and you are selling to end consumers, right? For example, if you are Speedmart 99. So eggs on the shelf is something that is considered a straight rebuy because it's a fast moving good. So customers will always be coming to get eggs. So all you need to do is replenish the orders. So let's say each order you buy 50 trays of eggs. Straight rebuy. Every week, 50 trays come in. Very simple. Second one is a modified rebuy. In this situation, the buyers may want to change their product specifications, their prices, or even suppliers if it is not producing products that is good enough for them. So can you imagine if you are a newspaper printing company, right? And the quality of the paper that you are getting has already become worse and worse over time. So definitely a modified rebuy will come into place because you are trying to look for better quality products, prices, and definitely a better supplier, right? So those existing suppliers will need to step up their game. Otherwise, the new suppliers will come in and take over their place. Now, a new task is a buying situation in which the buyer is buying a product or service for the first time. So in the new task, it is the formal process where they need to go through for the first time. Like in the personal selling process, maybe a salesperson will come in and then they will introduce the product to the buyers and get them to sign the purchase order at the end. Now, last one is system selling. So system selling is instead of buying just one product or in bulk, you are buying an entire solution. So what do I mean by this? Let's say right now you are a new company. You have just started up your firm. You need to buy a complete end-to-end system for your IT department, right? So let's say you need accounts software, you need computers, you need POS, which is point of sale machines. So you need all of these at one go and you need to make sure that they work well. So instead of getting these products from different buyers, you can get the entire solution from a system integrator where they can sell you computers, they can sell you the software, they can help you with technical support, and they have good after sales service, and they will make sure that all the hardwares and software that you buy will work well together. So when buying a complete solution, that is what we call system selling. So in a business buying process, it is not usually just one individual that makes the decision, unlike in B2C. So in B2B, we usually have a buyer center. This is not formal, but it's just who are the ones that can influence the buying decision, right? So there are a few here. Obviously, the person who will use the product or service have a say because end of the day, they are the ones that are going to be using it in the company. Influencers are people that can help to influence the decision because of their technical expertise of the products, right? So let's say now you want to get a printer for your company. So the users, let's say, is the office clerk that's going to use the printer, right? So she will get a say. The influencers might be the technical person in the company. So let's say there is a IT assistant. So he knows which printers will work well and which one will meet the kind of use case that the clerk needs. So he will also get a say. Now, the buyers, or what we more commonly call here the purchasers, are the person who is the one who will be doing the actual buying process. So he has to deal with the suppliers and also to consider the terms of the purchase. And then the next one, deciders. These are the person who is usually the one approving the purchase. So maybe let's say the finance department or the head of the finance department, right, will be the one that will be signing off on the final form to say that, okay, this purchase is approved. And gatekeepers are people who can control the flow of information. So sometimes purchasing agents can block salespeople from seeing the other users or the influencers in the company, because they know that in the end, the buyers or the deciders are the one that have the power to decide whether the deal goes through or not. So the gatekeeper may want to block the influencers or the users to change the minds of the buyers or of the deciders. So in the business buying process, obviously is very complex because there are many people involved in the decision, as we've just mentioned just now. The more people there is, usually there are more politics, there are more reasons, and various participants may have disagreements about whether they should buy this or not. So take for instance, if you are a major company, right? So let's say you are Google, and right now as the head of marketing, you want to buy a jet for yourself because you need to travel around the world all the time. So obviously, the finance people will not be happy because buying a jet is a few $100 million purchase, right? But you, as the marketing department, you know that you bring in much more revenue. You bring in billions per year. So you think that it's justifiable that you get your own private jet. But when different departments come head to head with each other, then it becomes a very complex decision. And how are they going to influence each other whether the purchase will go through or not? Okay, I think this is also a familiar chart, right? In the B2C one, we have also 4 different things, but from there, it is only personal to that person, right? So that 4 things will make up the black box. Instead, in the business buying behavior, it is from environmental, organizational, interpersonal, and individual. So as we know, environmental factors are external. It's not things that we can control. So things like the economy, how much supply is there for raw materials, the changes in technology, government laws and regulations, our competition, as well as the culture and customs. So internally within our organization, the objective, strategy, structure, system, and procedures, although we are part of the organization, but sometimes it is difficult for us to control any of this, especially if we are not the owner or the CEO of the company. Or in listed companies, you have your board members, which can also influence all of these things, which can change your buying behavior. Now, interpersonal will refer to the relationships between people in the company. So, who has the influence on the products, right? Like we said just now, the users, or is it the one who is going to sign off the purchase order? Who has the expertise, the authority, and the dynamics? So, the thing is, sometimes to buy the product, the person that wants to buy or needs to use it does not have a label or a tag on them that says, hey, I'm the buyer, so I need it, please buy it for me. It does not work that way in a business, but rather sometimes it depends on how people are interacting with each other, right? So if I'm the final decision maker and I like the person who wants this product, so I will get it for him. So that is a very complex relationship that is going on, and a lot of it boils down to how humans interact with each other to get what they want. So as humans, we each have our own individual preferences, our age, our income, our job, so and our motives as well. Very important. What is our buying style? You know, if you are a frugal person, you usually tend to go for cheaper things. So let's say if you need stationaries in the company, you might be buying the cheapest pens available because to you It's just because to you it's just a pen. But if your preferences and your buying style dictates that you must always be using the best, so even if you are just an office assistant, right, you might try to influence your management or your colleagues to get you more expensive pen to use, right? So these are the four factors which can influence a business buying behavior. It is similar to consumers, but slightly different. All right, we do not need to dive into too detail of all of it. I've covered it on a broad surface level just now. Instead, let's move on into the steps of the business buying decision process. Well, this is quite different from B2C's buying process because it is run by the company and decided by more people than the B2C. However, the first step really is pretty much the same with problem recognition. So you have the internal or the external stimuli. Similarly, when there is a need that arises from it, right? You run out of printer ink in the company. Therefore, you need to buy new printer ink. So that's why that's an internal stimuli. Now, external stimuli is outside of the company. So if you saw an advertisement for a new all-in-one printer that can do everything, right? So maybe that will be able to help you increase your efficiency in the office. So that's why you think that you should get it for the company. So an external stimuli. All right, so I'm going to use the COVID-19 as an example of what happens to a business buying process, right? Suddenly, when um, this whole thing happened, the businesses realized that there is going to be lockdowns and employees are required by regulation to work from home instead of coming to the office physically. So, the very first thing that they realize is there is a problem with communication. So, they realize that um, not all staff have laptops and some have to use their own personal laptops to do work. So what they want to do is they have a problem recognition that they are unable to communicate properly with all their staffs. Sometimes in meetings we cannot hear properly, so we cannot get our information across properly, right? So the stimuli here is that we need new mics for our staff. Okay, so a general needs description, which will describe the characteristics and quantity of the needed item. So let's say now we have 100 staffs in our company. So we know that we will need 100 pieces of mic, right? And then next we move to the product specification, which is what kind of mics do we need? Do we need like the really high-end ones? Or can we get by with just getting them a simple and cheap mic? So we will get some technical expertise from people in the company who knows about this, get some views. Now in value analysis, this is the step where we check whether we can get a cheaper version of it, a more cost-effective method or one that can bring us more value or more benefits by using less money, right? So as much as possible to maximize the value of the product. And then we move on to our supplier search. We have to look for who are selling these mics. Proposal solicitation is requesting proposals from qualified suppliers. So from a list of 20 suppliers, we've narrowed it down to 5. And then from 5 of them, we would like to look at their quotation. How much would it cost to buy these mics from them? And how much to get it to delivered to us, right? So when we have our quotations from our suppliers, we will try to negotiate with them and see which supplier can give us the best terms, which means the best price, the best quality, and maybe give us some extra free services like tech support or even free delivery. And then order routine specifications. This is only required if the product that you are going to be buying is going to be needed frequently. So if it is like these mics that I'm talking about, this might be a one-off purchase, right? Whereas if you are buying raw materials for your company, then you might need to specify how often are you needing these products. So they need to arrange the timings with you so that they can get the products to you on a timely manner. And then last but not least, we have performance review. We need to check whether the promises that the supplier meets is actually kept, and we have to look at the products and whether they perform as the supplier said they would. So in the olden days, not too long ago, maybe in the still in the 80s and 90s, all B2B marketing is usually done face to face, right? Because it involves such a large sum of money, we will need salespersons to physically communicate with our clients, and they need to build the relationships with them in order to get that kind of large business. But with the disruptions in digital technology and how everything is being done online now, even business to business purchases have moved online. This is to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the whole buying process, right? So how is it being done? They are buying things online. They are buying through companies' websites and even extranets. And what are the advantages that it brings? Obviously, it's good because as businesses, we can look for new suppliers all the time. It might be cheaper because we can compare between our different suppliers easily, right? And it's faster, it's more efficient, and it facilitates the service and support, right? Instead of waiting for a person to physically come and give you help or to fix your problems, sometimes now we can do it online and it's faster and it's cheaper that way. But of course, the bad thing about it is that it's not like the old days where relationships are built over interactions between the suppliers and the customers. So now, because everything is done online, there is lesser human interaction. And I think another advantage that is not written here is that it reduces the chance of any um, what we call under table kind of deals going on. So sometimes in big companies, the buyers will the purchasers of the company will strike deals with suppliers so that they can get an extra kickback from the trouble that they go through to help the company get the products, if you know what I mean. So there are two other different types of B2B markets, right? So in institutional markets, these are places like schools, hospital, nursing homes, and prisons that provides goods and services to people within their organization, right? So sometimes when they buy these things, it's not for profit. You know, if you take for example in hospitals, right? You provide the healthcare, you provide the rooms, and you provide food as part of a total package. So the food products that you're going to be offering to your patients is not something that is for profit. So that's why there are slightly different characteristics. Like they have low budgets, so they do not tend to spend as much um, because they do not have that kind of budget. So if you take, for example, if it's a prison. So in prisons, do you think that they are trying to feed all the prisoners high quality and the most expensive kind of foods? No, it's rather to, just be enough for them and be maintained by the budgets that the prisons might have. And captive patrons, haha, as much as they are prisoners, right? They have no choice but to take in whatever goods and services that is provided by all these uh, organizations. And last but not least, we have the government markets. So government, as we know, is a very large consumer, if you can put it that way. They consume products much more differently, and usually because they are doing it for the public by using the public's taxpayers' money. So that's why everything have to be more transparent, and they need to be able to get the most value out of the products that they can get, right? So that's why there is always a bidding system when you're trying to sell to the government, because they're trying to find the supplier with the best quality for the lowest price possible. Also, governments tend to want to buy products from local suppliers because they want the economy to be able to flow properly. And by buying from local businesses, they are able to stimulate the local economy. So some companies actually have special departments that caters specifically to government markets, right? In governments, there is a high need for computers. So companies like Dell have actually have special units set up just to serve governments, right? Because they need to meet the tailored needs of government users, they might not need the highest end computers um, in their government offices, but they need a large quantity. So if you take, for example, in Malaysia, we have 14 states in the country, right? And each state has maybe 10 to 20 government offices. So in each office, we might need 30 computers, you know. So if you do the math, it adds up to become a very big number. So it becomes worthwhile for companies to set up an entire department just to serve government markets. Obviously, there is a lot of bureaucracy in the government markets, so that's why there is a lot of paperwork, a lot of process, and it takes much longer than the usual B2B kind of deals. Okay, so that's it for B2B markets. It's similar to consumers, but then also slightly different, right? Okay, so that covers the chapter of business buyers. Nothing particularly difficult, I suppose. Very similar to consumer markets, right? Except that the buying process becomes a little bit more complex. Everyone still okay? Still alive? Uh, I think some of you had problems with camps just now, so I'm just going to run it again one more time just in case that you didn't get it. So any questions, anything you guys want to ask me, want to tell me, want to tell me what your day is like, no problem, go ahead. While I start camps. Everyone submitted their group assignment, right? Just checking. Yes, Jonathan. You managed to take your attendance yet? Anybody else who have problems, please take your attendance now. No problem. No problem at all. Okay, one more thing I forgot to mention, which is your individual assignment. So due to some unforeseen circumstances, your marks will be released tonight. Actually, it's already done. It's there. But yeah, I had some issues, so I need to hold the marks back first. And tonight I will release it, and it's completely marked digitally. Okay, so I have written the comments itself on the Turnitin link. So I will reopen the individual assignments link, click on it, and you should be able to see your marks as well as the comments that I've written for you. So for most people, there are some comments here and there. And then at the very end, at the bottom, I will write more extensively about what I think about your report. So definitely go have a look. I think should be by 8 p.m. I think 8 or 8:30. Yeah. So go have a look. There are some surprises that happen here and there. So I really hope you guys did well in your group assignment, which I will start marking, and hopefully I can get it out by Chinese New Year. Then you can have your entire coursework marks. Okay, for those of you that don't have much comments, it's because it's probably a good report. So there's nothing for me to really say. It will be mostly at the end, at the summary there. So have a look. And if there is nothing else, then I guess I will let you guys go for the day. I will be putting up 2 more videos, 2 or 3 videos depending on how long it is. I will maybe cut it a bit shorter. And then I will put it up on times. So make sure to check the videos there. It will be up by this week as well. I will put an announcement on Teams when it's up. Then you can have a look on it online. Alright. So just to be careful for everyone, if you need to look back at your tutorials, in the Microsoft Teams, there is a link that will actually have all the recordings of all our tutorial sessions from tutorial 1 to 10 so far, 1 to 9 so far. Alright? Can you briefly explain how our finals would be like? Right. So for finals, we will have 2 case studies. Each case study is worth 50%, and under each case study, you have 4 different questions. So it will be like doing your assignment. It's 4,000 words, and you have 8 hours to do it. So that is the gist of the final exam. I will release the case to you a few days earlier before the exam so that you have time to go and read. And then it's up to you guys and see how smart you guys are at spotting questions based on the article that I will provide you. Then, yeah. Yep, you have to write 4K words. No problem lah. I mean, it's from 8 AM to 4 PM, so definitely you guys can do it. It used to be 24 hours, but the exam center decided that that's too long, so they've cut it down to 8. So I know that some of you will try to collaborate with each other, but I strongly advise against that, because once you put it into Turnitin, and if you guys wrote the same thing, then it will catch, and yeah, good game, right? Go and tell exam center, you know, what's that session that you attended, right? The feedback session. Yeah, tell that to the head of school. Nothing I can do. I used 2 days to write 250 words for our group assignment. I slapped you, David. You almost missed the Turnitin deadline last night. Okay, so I guess that's all for today. Hope you enjoyed class, enjoyed our little experiment about consumer behavior, and I really wish I could dive more deeply into this, but time constraints, you know. So I will discuss more about exams in the upcoming tutorials lah, so don't worry about it. So goodbye, have a nice day. See you guys tomorrow for class then. Oh, I guess this is our last lecture then, since the upcoming ones will be recorded. Okay, last lecture. See you all. Bye. Happy Chinese New Year to everyone who's celebrating.